And so I was trying to define advocacy, and this is not a, this is my definition, so if you don't agree with it, it's okay, like we can discuss it later. But for me, this was pushing or making, like putting it out there, an argument to an audience for an action. And the action that we want, if you pass to the next slide, is increasing the funding. That's made most of all our advocacies to get a funding increase from the city council. So the city council are actually our audience in most of the time. And pushing, we do that through deputation meetings. For instance, there's a budget deputation where the public can present arguments to change budget items at the city level. We do that through reporting, we do that through our website, through our media, etc. But today I'm going to focus on how to make the argument, which means like a combination of having an insight, some type of insight, communicating that insight with this audience, maybe something that they're overlooking or not aware of. Also having a vision, what is it that we want? And how does that differ from the insight? And basically the solution is the gap that goes between this insight to that vision. And yeah, the one example of successful advocacy that we've done is with showing how, even though it looks like our funding was going up in nominal value, when we were accounting for inflation, there was actually a growing gap to what the cities thought they were increasing. They thought they were increasing investment into the arts. The reality, it was actually going downward when we were accounting for actual dollars at a given time. And so this has been quite a compelling argument of the insight is that we're actually not supporting the organization as much as we did 10 years ago. The vision is that we should maintain at least the status quo. And the solution is somewhat easy. We need to fill that gap of inflation, and we need to, going forward, adjust our funding to inflation, which was something that has been accepted by the city council. So this has been a successful argument. This is a limit, is that once you got it, like, what is it that we can discuss now, right? Like, what are other arguments that we can make? And a question that we get often from city council is, do the grant dollars reach all residents of Toronto? And this is begging for insights, right? Like, how do we know? Like, and this is where we wanted to move away from just where do recipients live or where do they operate the organization. And so on the next slide, we did last year, we were plotting all of the events in 2023 that were funded through our grants in the city. And so we grouped them by location, and the size of the bubble is giving you how many events that we funded at a given space. So top locations are downtown with sometimes more than 10 events that we were funding. And an event can be a festival, it can be a season, it can be an exhibition. These are not necessarily just one night type of events. But if you go to the next slide, like when we present this to City Council, first of all, like we got a lot of attention. This is in our 30-minute meeting. This is when every City Council dropped their phone and looked up. And this is where we saw that the map was actually a very powerful tool, that it was talking to people. And we should use that more in our argument making. But then, then there is some criticism, right? When you see that map, if you're a city councilor, you're like, there's nothing in my ward. Like, I'm contributing 5% of your budget, and I'm getting what, like 0.5% of the activities. So this is great because this is actually giving us a vision, because maybe we're not there yet. So we have some type of insight now, but we also have a vision that is not coming from us, which is coming from the people that we want to make the argument to. So let's take that vision of theirs and let's incorporate it into our argument. And so if you go next, well, now we need some more digging, right? We need to understand better what's going on. Like, why is it that it appears that a lot of the art activity happened downtown? And to be fair, like, you could also tell the argument that there was actually dots everywhere. So there is already some presence everywhere, but it seems to be more concentrated downtown. And there is multiple explanations. One of them being, well, the infrastructure. When we look online, trying to plot using OpenStreetMap data, all types of theaters, all types of cultural spaces, including libraries, including bookstores, including craft stores. We see that the concentration is way higher downtown. And that tells us something, right? Maybe it's more market driven as well. Like, where we realize that everything that is like operated by the city tends to be more distributed, but everything that is market driven tends to be more centered to downtown. And that kind of correlates with a beautiful work that was done by the School of City at University of Toronto, where the audience are. So this is an activity map, so that was used using mobile data. And this is showing that downtown Toronto is also where most Torontonians live. Not necessarily have a house there, but this is where they spend most of the time. Most of the waking hours are, this is like Elm Street, we see North York, Eglinton, and downtown. And this is on, I think, 2023 to 2024. So this is recent data. So we got this living plus destination hub that is also the downtown core. And then we can also see that the artists and cultural workers, where they're living also very close to the downtown core. Their place of work is in the downtown core, and they live also very close to that. So there is some type of infrastructure to it, and there's also, through grants, we can only fund where the artists and the arts organizations are, and those organizations can only present where there is space and when there is like infrastructure for them to present. So actually, this is one of the work that is in the making, which is we want to normalize the events that we are funding to whatever that index of culture is, so that we could see that maybe we're actually funding, there is an argument to make that we're funding extra outside of downtown core compared to what the infrastructure is. And that would be a good sign, or maybe not, maybe we're not exactly there yet. And we're still in the making of that research. But if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so but the main questions is not becoming like, oh, why is it not in my ward? Because the reality is also, the infrastructure might be downtown, but is it downtown people that go to those things, right? It could be that you could be living on the West End and still enjoy downtown infrastructure. The question is more, who and where are they from? The people who can access and the people who can't access arts, and about arts participation in general. And so here we are improving the vision from why is it not in my ward to are the constituents of this ward able to access arts? And this is kind of what we want to narrow down into. And this is where this is also work in progress. But one of the ideas that we're taking is that we're going to select the 100 or 50 most important venues, and we're gonna draw some isochrones. So if you're familiar, this is like the area which is 30 minutes. Like here, this is 30 minutes away from public transit from this location. So here I took like Aga Khan here, Roy Thompson Hall, and Rom, just as examples of like key locations. And we can see also by driving and how much how friendlier Toronto is in terms of art access if you own a car compared to if you transit through TTC. And also, it's very interesting because it also shows that we're not going to solve the problem of arts only through increasing our funding. It also makes a case for us to go talk to people who are interested in transportation and to give an argument to transportation that actually increasing access to transportation is also good for art accessibility, both for artists and for audiences. So transportation is one aspect, using isochrones, trying to find areas that maybe if you don't own a car and you live here, you might be close physically. It looks like you're close physically, but you might actually not be. But actually, I'm pointing to Rosedale, so I'm assuming that the car ownership is pretty high in here. But it might not be the case of Parkdale, which is known to be a fairly artistic concentration. There's a high concentration of artists living there, but yet poor access, ironically, to the institutional, to these ones, because there are all other venues here. And if we go to the next slide, this is all good transportation, but actually in our recent survey, we saw that the cost is the #1 barrier for art participation. And so it's not only about how far the arts events is happening from you, it's also, are you able to pay for that? And so it reminds us how important it is to have free or subsidized events that happens close to people, but also that just happens that are accessible for people to see and to attend. And we can see that actually the level of poverty in downtown is actually higher than most people would expect, and that it's highly possible, and we have to do more diggings on this, but even though the events might happen downtown, there's also a good chunk of the population downtown that might not be able to access these events if they are not free or they're not subsidized, they're not at a cost that allows people to go. And paradoxically, like, there are some areas of Etobicoke or areas of Scarborough that might be way wealthier, and they're actually only 40 minutes away from shows that are in downtown Toronto. And so aside from looking at StatScan data about income, we can also look on another type of insight that we can look at, which is something that is coming also in our project with the School of City that just started a month ago. We're looking into using ticketing, mobile, and credit card data to identify at venues where are the patrons coming from. So the venue might be here and the events might be there, but actually the people are coming from different places. And we want to identify the areas where people are not coming from, because these would be key priority areas to invest into local art for people to have access close to their home and in an accessible way. So that's for the insight. This is still work in progress. I'm not gonna give policy recommendation here, and this is more like a method of what we're following, and I'm trying to share the mental framework that we're using to build that argument. And as I promised you, there is the vision and the insight, and now we need to fill that gap, right? And this is where, how can we bring arts where it's needed the most? And this is where we already have a few solutions for that, and based on what we're going to find, we're going to be able to push different scenario. One is, well, there's already orgs that are creating events all around Toronto, and I actually invite you. This is public data. You can access it on our website on the impact map. If you go to our website and go to the impact page, you'll be able to click on each of those dots and see what it is that we funded. So you'll see the venue that it is at, and you'll see the organization that was organizing it. And what is interesting is that as soon as we go outside the downtown core, we see a lot of libraries, public schools, community centers, which are not technically arts venue the way we think of it. But we can identify who are the orgs that are already there and try to encourage increases into their budget so that they can do more of it. If this is what the city councilors want, to have more in their wards, well, we can identify the people who already do it and potentially increase their funding. Another solution that we have in our toolbox on the next slide is, well, these are all the projects that we wanted to fund for 2023 and that we couldn't because of lack of budget. All of these applications were deemed of merit by our panels, and a bunch of them are actually outside the downtown core as well. And I know also that some of the ones that are downtown were free events, and we're not able to fund those. So with an increase, we would also be able to increase the success of those applications of merit in the key areas and for key disciplines or for key, like if it's for free events, for instance, downtown. And the last solution is we have existing programs that are ideally suited to use non-institutional art venues. For instance, something that is very popular in the summer is Arts in the Parks, which today we operate at around 20 parks that has events, free events in multiple parks. So with an increase, it would be possible to develop this to way more parks and to target parks in the areas that we uncover in the research. Similarly, we fund community arts since the 90s. This is also organizations that are ultra-local that offer a range of sort of art participation events. And in similar way to the parks, we also have programs to have artists having events in libraries, in schools, in historic sites. So there's different ways to use that third space that is owned by the city and that could serve as art venue. Thank you. If you have any questions.